Hey, I'm Emma Garlett, and on today's episode of Paint It Blak, I'm going to discuss the upcoming federal budget and the importance of a wellbeing chapter. I'm also going to answer questions about how direct and tailored funding will address inequality and drive outcomes for First Nations Australians. Don't forget to click on the bell to receive more Paint It Blak. Now let's get into it. When it comes to splashing the taxpayer's dollar, the narrative has historically been economic outcomes versus social impact, but that is starting to change. Next week, the Australian government will present us all with the October budget. The budget is intended to have a focus holistically on wellbeing to help us all, but it needs to do more than that. It must be founded on an equity model and focus heavily on First Nations people who will have much lower levels of wellbeing. Historically, an average Australian budget includes an economic analysis and estimates of revenue and costs, amongst other things like tax spending. But now the budget is going through its own evolutionary process. Just as we change, so does the budget, it seems. But last year, the budget included funding to help Australia get through COVID-19, as well as funding for a range of different areas, including agriculture, water and the environment, defence, education, skills and employment, health, foreign affairs, trade, industry, science, energy and resources, transport, regional development, communications, social services. Since when would a government decide to spend money specifically on its constituents' wellbeing? And what does that even mean? So, what is a wellbeing? Wellbeing is generally considered to be having good health, safety, opportunity, culture and respect. The World Health Organization describes wellbeing as a resource for healthy living and a positive state of mental health. That is more than just an absence of an illness. It is something that enables us to function well, psychologically, physically, emotionally and socially. Okay, so we know what it is, but how do you even measure wellbeing? Is it as simple as giving us all a survey to tick off how well we are? Or do we base it off current data and reporting? We can measure wellbeing off a raft of current reporting frameworks, metrics, and economic indicators. But long term, we need to ensure the investment we are putting in is delivering results over the next decade. However we do it, this needs to be figured out pronto. If you had to put a figure on how much your wellbeing is worth, what would it even be? Well, it is saying something when the government steps in and tells us a chapter of the budget will be focused on wellbeing. It means the cost of being unwell and not going to work is hurting the economy. It is simple and should be an uncomplicated answer. But despite my unanswered questions, the Federal Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, seems to know what he is doing. He seems to be getting inspiration for Australia's wellbeing through following in New Zealand's footsteps. I look forward to setting out in our October budget some of the options we are considering when it comes to better measuring what matters in our economy and judging progress, including best practice from around the world. The budget is a tricky one. It was only a few months ago when Finance Minister Katie Gallagher said the federal budget is in worse shape than the state and territory budgets when comparing them like for like. But I doubt this is a good comparison. The Finance Minister said that there are talks on broader reforms to the country's tax system. It seems we're getting a major overhaul of government spending priorities and the taxation system. It is a bit warm and fuzzy that our wellbeing will be a priority, and since the Treasurer is looking across the ditch to help with his reforms, let's have a look at it too. Not only is New Zealand ahead of us in time zones, it's also well ahead of us in social progression. In 2019, the Kiwis had their first wellbeing budget, which set out 5 priorities. 1, transition to a sustainable and low emissions economy. 2, social and economic opportunities. 3, lift Maori and Pacific people's opportunities. 4, reduce child poverty. And 5, improving mental health. The priority which caught my eye was lifting Maori and Pacific people's opportunities. I'd like to see this priority translated and applied in the Australian Wellbeing Budget chapter for the benefit of First Nations people. Direct and tailored funding will drive outcomes. This was only the beginning for New Zealand. Since then, the government has allocated their money towards wellbeing for 4 wellbeing budgets. I'd like to think it's more than just a glossy document with warm and fuzzy words. It is a progressive measure to change the nature of government spending, which changes the economic value levers. No longer will the basic ways of measuring Australian progress through GDP and other measures be the only indicators. We are advancing into a more mature way to establish national progress. Australia has a lot to learn from the leadership of New Zealand, and a wellbeing budget is a decent tool to implement, but only if it includes a large proportion which focuses on First Nations people who have lower levels of wellbeing. An equal approach to all in a wellbeing chapter will not address the gaps in the standards of wellbeing, which is evident in this country. It is about equity, not equality. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying Paint It Black with me, Emma Garlett, why not leave a like and review and click on the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Have a good one.